We are continuing and actually completing the seventh in the seven miracles in the book of John. These seven miracles were very specifically chosen to communicate something precise, each one of them. Now, we've not dealt with these seven like that just yet. That is actually how we're going to be what we're going to be doing next Sunday. We're just going to take a message, a session, and we're just going to talk about, okay, we've talked about each one of these seven individually. So now, what do they all mean? Why are they important to us? We'll talk about some similarities, and that's going to be next Sunday. And I want you to be here for that, because it really puts the capstone on what these seven are actually talking to us about. But first, we need to complete the seven, right? So today, we're going to be looking in John chapter 11, and we're going to be looking at verse 21 and then some of the following verses. This one is about raising Lazarus from the dead. This particular picture is, I looked at a lot of pictures. When we talk about the resurrection of Christ, there are a lot of really interesting pictures, a lot of moving pictures. When we talk about the resurrection of Lazarus, they're kind of cartoonish, in my opinion, and highly unrealistic. There are a lot more mystical approaches, it seems to be, with the Renaissance painters. It was a very mystical approach to it. This is highly unrealistic. If you're going to open the tomb of somebody who's been dead as long as Lazarus had been dead, I don't think there would be children perched on top of it. They probably would have been running for their lives. They would not. It can't be how it looks. This picture is probably a little more realistic of what's going on inside, but it's kind of creepy. So I didn't lead with that one. I kind of let you warm up just a little bit to realize that Jesus on the outside, and maybe it looked kind of normal, but something was going on inside that probably was tantamount to this. Do you want me to leave that picture up there for a little while for you to think about it? I know that a movie's just come out recently, World War, what's it called? Yeah, there you go. This is not what that looks like either, by the way. Let's read some scripture. John chapter 11. Listen to this story. This is just a part of it. The entire chapter is the story itself. But let's just read these excerpts. Verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." That doesn't sound like much of a prayer, right? "But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." "Yes," Martha said, "he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day." Listen to this. Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die." Then Jesus, and jumping down in that story just a little bit, then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the same one earlier who was blaming Jesus, she said, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days." The eternal realist, right? Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me." When he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to him, "Unbind him and let him go." Now, is that not a movie that's ready to be made? That's just Great stuff. I read this stuff, and I've said it before. I read the Bible, and I see this video in my head. It's all a movie, and I'm thinking, and I'm filling in the holes that are not. Oh, and I get all excited reading stories like this. And this is one of these really amazing stories. Several things that are striking about this passage. First of all, its development. Jesus delayed his arrival, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Jesus delayed his arrival. So the development of this story is very peculiar in that elsewhere, when Jesus was called to somebody, he went immediately, and this one he didn't. The second thing is its personal nature. Jesus was very familiar with his family. There had been several interactions, and Jesus knew them quite well, which is why the sisters of this man who was gravely ill sent for Jesus when it looked like this was really, this is not just a common cold, this is bad. Sent for Jesus quickly. The third thing that is striking is its simplicity. There was no fanfare about it. He just cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." Here's how the story went down from the beginning. A man named Lazarus fell gravely ill. This was a family that was familiar with Jesus, and his sister sent word to him that he needed to come immediately. Just a note to self, knowing what he can do is not sufficient for something to happen. Did you hear me? Knowing what he can do is not sufficient for something to happen. Jesus, knowing the decision, the situation, he actually delayed his departure for Bethany for 2 days. It kind of made sense, in my opinion, to his disciples, because one of them said in verse 8 of that chapter, "Lord, you know, they wanted to stone you the last time you were there." And so it kind of made sense. Well, he's kind of hanging off a little bit. Maybe he doesn't think it's too serious. And besides, it's dangerous to go there. It probably made sense to his disciples. But in Jesus' mind, for 2 days, he's thinking about all of this. After the second day, he looks at his disciples and he said, "Lazarus has died. For your sake, I'm glad that I wasn't there, so that you can believe." And then Jesus adds this phrase, "But let us go to him," which again probably doesn't make sense. You think about that. He's dead, I'm not going. Or he was sick, I'm not going. He's dead, and now let's go to him. And his disciples are going, okay, this is not really making sense. Have you ever read something in the Bible that just doesn't make sense? Yeah, me too. That doesn't make sense. And yet, this is what happened to his disciples too. So don't wish that you were back then. Okay, first of all, life was far more difficult back then. So let's not go back there. Carl's Jr. didn't exist, we won't go there. Jesus said, "Let's go to him." His disciples responded, "Well, you said this, so guys, let's go and let's all just die together." That's how this is going to come down. And I don't know if he was thinking, well, Lazarus is already dead, and they're going to stone Jesus if he goes back there. Let's go with him, and so we'll just all die. He arrives, and the funeral aftermath is underway. There's deep mourning, there's shrieking, there's crying, very typical in that day and age when somebody were to die. And Jesus was moaning in his spirit. If you read through this 11th chapter, and I suggest you do that at your leisure, just read the story from beginning to end and see. I'm just filling in some holes here. He asked to go to the place where Jesus, where they have buried Lazarus, and he asked that the stone be rolled away. When they objected because of this decomposition that was normal, he'd been dead for 4 days. Okay, 4 days. That's not a pretty sight. No doubt they buried him within a dozen hours and 24 at the most. And so for 3 days that tomb had been sealed, and it was not a good thing. But Jesus persisted. Roll the stone away. Calling with a loud voice, he called Lazarus, and he came out, just like that. No hocus pocus. No killing chickens. No burning herbs, waving them in the air. No dancing, no twirling, no trances. No magical symbols on the tomb door. Roll the stone away. And a voice, the voice of one person. Lazarus, come out. Pretty simple. Here's what's on my mind as I pondered this passage this week. The first one is this. In life there are delays, but Jesus knows it. There are delays in our life. When life is hard and we want answers, we don't want to wait, do we? It needs to be here. It needs to be here now. There are times when we don't see the reasons for the delay, but listen to this. Delays do not mean denial. Delays do not mean denial. Because he does not answer, it does not mean no. We may not understand. What was Mary and Martha thinking? He wasn't that far away. Maybe a day's journey. Where is he? It's important to remember that God is eternal and he's not limited to time, but boy, are we ever. We develop expectations, we develop perceived needs and anticipated rewards. Did you get all that? We develop expectations. We develop perceived needs. We think we need this. We certainly want it. And we also develop anticipated rewards. Why isn't it happening? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm tithing. I'm praying. I do this. I do that. I'm pretty consistent. Why isn't my life better? It all seems so logical, and we attach time frames to what we expect to be realized. Remember this story. There's Moses standing at the Red Sea. It's in the second book of the Bible. It's called Exodus. It's all called Exodus because it means coming out. And the children of Israel were in Egypt, and they were now delivered, and the Lord takes them on a path that takes them not directly to a place where they would be safe, but rather to the edge of a huge menacing sea. Behind them, Pharaoh has changed his mind. No, you can't go after all. So he musters his troops, and the chariots are turning, and the men are dressed for battle. And so behind him, he's got Pharaoh's army, and in front of him, you have this menacing sea. A clear path would have been nice. Don't we all like the clear path? But what did Moses get? He got the devil in the deep blue sea. Now what? Let me share this secondly with you. Dilemmas don't mean abandonment. Delays do not mean denial, and dilemmas do not mean abandonment. Listen to me. God knows right where you are today. And his timing is not due to hesitation on his part. It is not due to tardiness or laziness or just being a mean God. Whatever other label you want to put out there. He knows exactly what you need. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 is a very well-known passage of Scripture. Everybody likes this one. You've been around very long. This is one of those Scriptures that we like to put on little plaques and put on our wall, and we make little cards, and we put it on the mirror, and we like this one. Let's read it together. Everybody, you ready? For I know the plans I have for you,